Hey guys, welcome back. It's a 2 for Tuesday. 2 Coin Shop podcast, 2 on Tuesday. First was Ryan. Now we got our friend Paul Hollis all the way from Manville, Louisiana. Now, for you guys that don't know Paul Hollis, he has been a state legislator for how many years?
11 years now.
11 years now. Holds House Seat 104. And has been fighting for bullion sales tax for...
Yeah, ever since I got in office. I just think it's a travesty to charge, people a 9, 10, 11% margin to send to the government on trying to buy something tangible and real like gold and silver bullion and numismatics.
I guess that leads us right into, so kind of what got you into first coins and then what got you into battling?
Yeah, I've always been a guy to follow my heart. When I was a little kid, my grandmother, I was 6 years old, and I still remember, it's probably one of my earliest memories. She gave me a peace dollar, and my brothers were like, what's going on with Paul? And I would just hold that peace dollar and stare at it and, wonder what has happened and the time in which that coin was produced. And ever since then, the more I could learn, the more I could read about coins, the stories, it really, through all of my years, has been something that gets me really excited to talk about. And cool. I remember when friends would come over to the house, I'd be like, let me show you my coin collection. My brothers, they were always embarrassed, like, oh gosh, here goes Paul again. And most of the people would be like, I don't care about that. But every now and then I'd find somebody, they're like, that's cool, Yeah, and right. Those are the people that I like, So I think they call us coin weenies, and I don't mind to admit it, I'm a real coin weenie. So,
well, my first fantasy football team was called the Coin Weenies.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
So I feel you right there.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand.
All right, so that's your coin beginning. We were talking a little bit earlier. You did sell coins at Blanchard. Tell me kind of how you got in there.
Yeah. I actually went to LSU, graduated from LSU, a political science degree, planned to go into the family business. But before very long, I made friends with folks at Blanchard, and I said, hey, why don't y'all give me a job here? And I worked there for a number of years, and at some point I became their numismatist, which basically made me like a liaison between John Albanese, who did consulting work for Blanchard, and I can say early on in my numismatic career, I was in my early 20s, I got to know and meet all kinds of folks in the industry that were super marquee. I mean, your dad, for one, Kenny Sr., it was exciting to meet him, your Uncle Danny, and
Uncle Dan, shout out.
They would come into town and visit us at Blanchard, and I was just all the people whose books that I read as a little kid, like Doug Winter, I got to meet those folks, and it was awesome. And to this day, I'm a guy, I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in my life, because every day I've done something that I truly enjoy. But cool. 11 years ago, I got a wild hair to run for political office, and that kind of sidetracked my coin career. Not that I didn't continue to trade coins, but I've done that now for 11 years, and that's been very fulfilling.
Cool. Now, I'm gonna stop this real quick. Can you say liaison again?
Liaison? Did I say it strange?
You said it very, 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 I don't know how, let me see. You said it very Manville way.
Liaison. Can you say it?
You say liaison.
Liaison? Maybe that's French. My French, heritage, I guess.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool.
That was the cool thing, though, because I would go, place to place with John at coin shows, and I remember meeting, a lot of folks that are still friends to this day, and not many people get that kind of experience. And I really just walked into it. I mean, who would have known, that Blanchard was right there in New Orleans, and I've lived in Louisiana almost my entire life.
Now, were you guys hand-picking coins back then? Were you guys stringent on product back then?
Yeah. And his eye is, and your dad's eye, just phenomenal, picking out, some amazing coins and values. But I mean, that's going back almost 30 years ago. And I think of the changes in the marketplace today and the values of coins. It's just, it's amazing, and I see why people continue to buy collectible coins, and the coin market is doing great. And then with COVID in these last 3 years, I never would have thought that the market would be be as strong as it is. But despite, an international, tragedy like COVID has been, all it's done is boost the coin market. And I'm excited about the future. And you guys are always on the cutting edge with what y'all do here at U.S. Coins. And I really appreciate being on y'all's podcast today.
No, we're glad to have you, man. Yeah. It was, it was a little surprising to see you here today. And then, it just kind of naturally happened and say, hey, let's go to the podcast room and see if we can't get what we can get out of old Paul.
Yeah. So happy to talk to you guys. Y'all got a great set here too. It's really nice.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate
very
that.
high end.
Yeah, yeah. We appreciate that. We work pretty hard. It was something that we just kind of kicked around the idea for a while, and then it just got, we just kind of caught fire, and it was like, okay, hey, we're going to do this, so we're going to need this, and this, and we started kind of putting things together and started putting some guests together, and it's been fun. I mean, like if anything, it's been fun. At the end of the day, kind of like you said, you never felt like you were working because you were having, the time of your life, and I feel the same way. I walk in and I get to see my brothers. I get to say hi to my dad. I get to see my uncles and uncles, and it's a great environment. Everybody works hard. Everybody has a contribution. Yeah. And it's truly a team effort here, and I think that's why we are. And I know that's why we're as successful as we are today.
Well, I think that's awesome. And you got to love family businesses. And the fact that you guys, have your uncles here and your dad, how awesome is it for him to have, all three boys in the business and his brother? It's really cool.
Well, and also contributing.
Yeah. Everybody's got,
I know a lot of family businesses, and they got some laggards.
Yeah.
Right? But
there's a lot of families where brothers can't talk to brothers and fathers can't talk to sons and vice versa. But you guys get along so beautifully, and y'all feed off of each other's energy, and you all have your space here. And then, in my visits here, and to me, it's a 5-hour drive west. I have been able to see how y'all's synergy with each other is really phenomenal. It's inspiring to see. So I like coming to visit you guys and seeing y'all's, fine outfit.
Cool. Well, I greatly appreciate that. That's very nice of you to say. We do appreciate that. So how many years at Blanchard?
I was there for about 11 years.
Okay. Coolest coin you sold?
Oh, my first coin was believe it or not, a Mint State 67 Oregon commemorative with, a lot of natural color to the coin. And you could tell I was a real coin weenie because nobody sold, commemoratives, let alone one in Mint State 67 with rainbow toning. But it was just, paying homage to the fact that I was big into coins, and I love talking about them.
Okay, so let's say, so an Oregon 7 with color, how much did that sell for back then?
Back then it was $1,500.
Okay.
Yeah, but coins like that, and today it's probably a higher grade, I would suspect, but coins like that you just don't find today. Most of those coins go in collections and they don't ever come back out. I think some of the coins that I sold, and they were big numbered coins, and if they were on the market today, there's no telling the kind of prices.
Yeah.
It's amazing though in these last 20 years, because I remember when the first the $1804, it brought $990,000, $10,000 shy of $1 million, and you probably remember Leon Hendrickson was involved in that.
Yeah.
And then you look to today, and it's like $1 million coins are almost customary.
They're everywhere.
Like every week a $1 million coin trades. And to see a $18 million coin, it's just, I was optimistic about the coin market 20 years ago, but my optimism has been far exceeded. And COVID, with what we've seen during COVID, with this market continue to rage on even further, has been one of those things where any doubter that's out there, that doubt will go away fast.
Okay, so on that, what do you attribute that into the coin space, in the rare coin space, right? So you saw there were a lot of different collectibles, in a lot of different areas that gained new collectors or older collectors who spent more money on rare items. What do you attribute it to rare coins in terms of COVID? Do you think, where did it come from? Why all of a sudden rare coins? Because it literally went from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
It did.
That's quick.
I think there's so much money out there. You think about the incredible amount of money that's been created with interest rates at nearly 0%. There's a phenomenal amount of cash out there. You looked at the cryptocurrency market, the amount of money people, I would say, used to make in that entity, and there's just so many dollars dollars, but yet, 1933 and prior gold coins like that, they just don't make them anymore. And so you've got a limited supply, and you've got a massive amount of money chasing too few goods. And, simple supply and demand, simple economics would tell you that limited supply is going to see increased prices. And that's what we have seen. And it's just shocking to me to see, so many coins that used to be $15,000, $20,000. Today they're six-figure rarities, and you're hard pressed to get them at that price point.
Yeah, no, I mean it's tough, like you said, to get those. I feel like in COVID time, it feels like more people were at home.
Yeah,
they're pulling out their collections. They're bored.
Yep.
And they're looking for other things to do, and they start to get back into their hobbies that they have been doing since they were, a kid.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I attribute a lot to that. More time on their hands to do things like coin collecting,
Yeah.
And some people say, hey, what I really liked to do as a kid, why did I let that go? And a lot of those people had, a couple of years to focus on things that were, relatively unimportant and became important.
Yeah.
And so it continued to generate interest in collectible coins.
Yeah. And then so we talked about your first coin that you sold. What was the coolest coin that you got to sell, or that one of your favorite coins that you've got to hold?
There's so many coins that are out there that I really love, but the story of the half Disney, and I like to believe that was made with the melted down silverware of George and Martha Washington. That's to me really cool.
Yeah, very
the
cool.
chain scent.
Yep.
No Stars 2.5. Coiled hair Stella. It's hard for me to rank the coolest coins that I placed
so many
over the years. Yeah, but it doesn't matter if it's a copper coin, a bronze coin, a silver coin, gold coin. I just, there's so many stories. And I think most people that are big into coins, they typically have a real appreciation for history. And so I know when I'm looking at coins, I think about that. I think more about the history of the coin and not so much the pricing, the value. But I get it. There's a lot of people that are into coins just to make money. But to me, it's, a piece of history that you can hold in your hands.
Yeah.
And with the advent, and, hats off to John Albanese, because that's when I started buying some pretty decent coins with the advent of NGC and PCGS, that gave a lot more comfort, because a lot of people, their eye is not, all that great.
Sure.
But that makes a lot of the concerns about spending big bucks in the marketplace when, you haven't been a coin grader, a professional coin grader, which I don't think I could ever do. I'd lose my mind. I think this little table, and I think about 5 or 6 people in a dark room looking at, 3,000 coins a day. And at some point in time, they'd take me out of there in a straitjacket. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But to be able to tap that expertise that they no doubt have, and to have that actually on the coin, sealed, you know what you're getting. And coins trading like a commodity has brought, incredible amounts of money into the coin market. And I think for years to come, they're going to continue to see, that kind of capitalization of the coin market continue to grow. And I'm excited to see U.S. coins kind of on the forefront of seeing that occur and taking inventory in some of the most amazing rarities. I love coming here. Last time I was here, I got to see some proof coins from the 1830s, and you rarely get to see that. I mean, these were pop 1 and 0 coins. So,
every day. I mean, even downstairs in the store, every day is a treasure. Someone brings in something just super cool. And it's not always a coin. It could be a vintage watch, or it could be a piece of paper money. But we get to see some really cool documents and things like that as well. But it's great. It's really good really great what John's doing for coins. I mean, I feel like CAC, has been just what a huge plus for the retail market, to be able to get something and that they, not only just has a little white sticker that says PQ+++, but now there's actual green stickers that, a lot of retailers can get into, and they can get extra points on their registry. And but super cool.
Yeah, and that's, growing by leaps and bounds. And, I mean, most people are very familiar with it. But the other day I had somebody's like, Paul, I'm embarrassed to ask you this, but you keep talking about the green bean. In my world, a green bean is something that you eat, know. And I was surprised. I was like, I've never explained this to you. And I felt terrible. I was like doing him an injustice. And I said, let me give you a quick lesson. But, I mean, to me, it's awesome. And it's just another way to know that what you're buying has got that important seal of approval. And so I tell people, if you love coins, there's so many different protections now that exist in the industry. Sure. It's not like it was, 30 years ago,
No, that's true. So,
you guys talking about CAC?
Yeah.
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 the new grading service, or
No, we're just getting into. We were talking about nice coins and how
how do you
he's
feel
talking
about
about
how do you feel about the new grading service?
Oh, I'm excited about it. It's going to be interesting to watch it continue to take root as a grading service. I mean, CAC's been around for a relatively long period of time. I think a lot of folks knew that at some point in time it might transition into a full-fledged grading service. And with somebody like John Albanese, who started both NGC and PCGS, I think they put together a really wonderful team of graders, and it's got a great future. But I also think about, if you want to call it the end user, the people that buy rare coins. And I just tell you, when I was, 6, 7, 8 years old, if I hypothetically had a lot of money to buy coins, I could have gotten myself in trouble. But my point is the safeguards now that exist with all the different websites and information that you guys put out and others, people feel comfortable. And I think that's why you're seeing, so many coins that, 20, 25 years ago were trading at a small fraction of where they are today. People have a great degree of comfort and buying coins. And it's like you said, during COVID, everybody had all this time and they went back to their roots as a kid. What do I really like? And that's not just with coins, that's with any kind of collectible. You look at, comic books or die-cast cars or watches and the capitalization of baseball cards. They've gone up significantly, and I'm not surprised now. So
So what's the most expensive coin you handled?
Oh,
the most expensive coin?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've traded a lot of really expensive coins, but I never, when I worked for Blanchard, I actually traveled with them a lot because a lot of times it was my job to deliver coins. And with Y2K, I remember a lot of times we would trade out of bullion at the end of Y2K. As we got into year 2000, the concerns for a lot of people went away. But a lot of times people would trade their bullion for, sometimes we'd have 200 pounds of silver and gold and we'd give them one coin. And they'd be like, oh, thank you. It's like, okay. But I had the pleasure of, flying, spending 3 hours with that coin and bringing it to those folks. And, as a kid, a 6-year-old kid traveling with the 13 Liberty nickel or, some of these amazing coins that I've had the opportunity to spend a little time with is pretty awesome. But it's always peculiar when you're on an airplane and you're sitting next to somebody. And I don't know about you guys, when you travel with coins, I hold them in my hand. I don't let go. And the person sitting next to you, you want to tell them the story because we're storytellers. We love history. But at some point they're going to say, can I hold it? And the answer to that, I'm afraid to say is no. You know what I'm saying? No, I can't. I'll show you the front. Or the obverse, the reverse. I actually have a shirt. This tells you how big of a coin weenie I am. On the front of the shirt, it says obverse. In the back, it says reverse. My wife's like, Paul, if you're going to leave the house wearing that, I'm not going with you. So I was like, okay, I'll change my shirt.
Yeah, I think that's funny when like we've gotten some collections in before. Some of our customers, it's items that are passed down. So it's coin collection that was passed down. And then that's how they kind of get into collecting. But I've had some instances where a customer wanted to trade a coin for bullion. And, when you get into some of the bigger coins and they trade it for silver, it's funny, the trade-off when you give someone one coin and you get all this silver. But when someone tries to trade,
it's the opposite of that.
Tries to trade a big coin, or they try to trade, something like a couple of rolls of gold.
Yep.
The difference in the amount of size that you would get with silver is just, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, no, I get it.
They'll have to make trips to come back to,
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's so.
I love what you guys do here, though, because, people come in off the streets from this area and I would imagine around the state. And a lot of times as a service to them, y'all do appraisals, give them an idea. If somebody passes, you can tell them, because a lot of times what people do is they just, they got 100, 200 coins. They just give everybody a third of that 100 or 200. And, that is not fair. But you guys will give an appraisal or tell them the history of their coins. And it's not like they're obligated to sell them. And I think that's really awesome. I wish when I was 6 years old, there was a place like U.S. Coins that I could go to. I remember I'd ride my bike up the street, and they were nice people, but they were closed down before I even went to college. But it was just some old, coin shop, kind of like, probably a lot of them in small towns. But I grew up in a fairly big city. But here, you guys are like on the cutting edge, and, it's a major operation. I think that's awesome. So the 6-year-old Paul would have loved to have stumbled across U.S. Coins, 40 some odd years ago. I keep wanting to say 30 some odd years ago, ago, but I'm now 50, so it was, 44, 45 years old. And your dad shared stories about you guys cutting grass. That's what I would do. I was going to tell him that sometimes I wouldn't even knock on a door to cut grass. I would just cut their grass, and a couple of times ladies would run out and, get out of here, what are you doing? Yeah. But every now and then I'd be completing the job, and they felt compelled to give me $5, $10, whatever the going rate was. And then I'd jump on my bike, go to the coin shop, and go through all those books and buy whatever I thought was cool, know. But I based it off of visual, whatever looked really cool. And they had stamps, but that was never my thing. But coins always has been.
So do you think philatelics are dead?
I wouldn't say dead, but I remember as a young person, numismatist slipped off my tongue so much easier than philatelics. You know what I'm saying? And so I just don't think that market has evolved. And let's face it, it's paper with a little bit of gum on the back, and I just don't get excited about that. I mean, I know there's some really cool stamps that are out there, but I would say, if I'm putting money in something that's tangible, I think that the metals you can't go wrong with as a hedge against inflation. And we've seen a tremendous amount of that here, especially lately. I think we're going to see that, continued into the future. Fed's doing everything they possibly can to curtail that. But I mean, we might have 8% interest rates, and imagine buying a house at a 8-9% interest rate. But you got to stamp out inflation. So I kind of feel for the Federal Reserve. They are in a pickle, but we've gotten ourselves into this pickle. But the point with all that is you can't go wrong with real tangible assets, and that's the thing that makes me a believer at heart, which is, the thing about gold and silver and platinum and rare coins. It's just something stable and real and tangible that I think everybody ought to have. And I think everybody likes a little stash. I tell people, you may have a safe, you may not. Some people think of a safe to store guns, but I don't know about you. I just like having my little stash. And I don't mean cash, because cash just kind of devalues over time, but metals and coins, they don't devalue. And it's always real, and it's something you can put in your hands. And the 6-year-old Paul hands it to people, and if they don't get excited, I think something's wrong with them. But they look at me and they're like, something's wrong with this guy. But the reality is I'm just a guy that's followed my heart, and I think I'll love coins until the end. And I've enjoyed my 11 years in political office, but I love coins and the stories that go along with them even more, by leaps and bounds, believe it or not.
Wow. So what got you into run for that House seat?
My dad was in public service, and my family, public service was instilled as something very important to us. And I've got 2 brothers, and one moved out of Louisiana, and the other brother, I mean, he's as entertaining as they come, but he's really goofy. And I think it was decided that if anybody was going to run for public office, it would be me. My wife is lovely, and she's everything about her is great, but she does not like politics in the least. And she's like, look, I know you want to do this. If you do it, I'll support you, but don't expect me to go knocking on doors or anything like that. And I remember you got to knock on doors. Somebody offered me a red 10K, and I drank it, and I didn't know that my lips were bright red. I looked like a clown, and I probably knocked on 200 doors that day. I go home, my wife's like, did you do good today? And I said, oh yeah, I talked to so many people. I got a lot of voters. She's like, have you looked in the mirror? And I said, no, why? And she says, just go look in the mirror. And I look in the mirror, and I got a big old clown face from drinking, red 10K. But the point, though, is here I am 11 years later, and there's so many of those people that, at town hall meetings or just various events, they're like, you knocked on my door, and I didn't want to tell you, but you had the biggest Kool-Aid mustache ever, So, but most of the time you got dogs barking at you, and people would open the door, and they wouldn't have a shirt on, and awkward, and they want to try to solve all the world's problems, and you're like, this is weird for me. How is this not weird for you? But,
politics, do I got your vote or not?
Right. I need to move it along.
Here. Let's talk about
or go away. Yeah. So I guess my point, though, is in my 50 years of life, coins have given me so many stories. But my service in public office, my time at the state capitol, it's been fun, and I've just followed my heart, and I feel like a guy that's never worked a day in my life. The worst day that I've had, and if I can say this is my worst day, driving into the Capitol one day, they installed these bollards. Which, do y'all know what a bollard is?
Yes.
Yeah, metal rod. A lot of people are like, well, what is a bollard? 3 rods. And I'm driving over something, and all of a sudden the rods eject under the hood of my car. Airbag goes off, and I go shake the governor's hands. And at the time we had a Governor Bobby Jindal, got the softest hands. He shakes my hands. I'm like, it hurt terrible. Like Superman shaking the hand of, who was it? The bad guy in the black suit. You probably know who I'm talking about. Wait, no, crunched his hand. The 3 arch criminals. Who's that guy? You're into comic books. You should know that. The three arch criminals. He shook his hand. He crushed it. You remember that?
I don't.
Well, that's the way it felt when our governor, Bobby Jindal, shook my hand. And he's like, there's blood on your cuff there. And I was like, oh, gosh. And what I didn't realize is the endorphins from having an airbag hit you in the face and the bollard in my car.
Yeah.
And my car was like bouncing up and down from the bollards, not working properly.
Yep.
Anyway, I ended up going to the hospital. You got to go with the state police. That's kind of the rules. And that was embarrassing because everybody thought I was a criminal. I didn't know that, but they were like, we thought you were a criminal, because when criminals come here, they usually have a state police with them. And I'm like, no, I'm a legislator. The bollards hit my car. Airbag went off. Cut my hand. So that was a bad day. Yeah. But I've had a lot of good days, and I like serving the people, and I love engaging with the public, my constituents. It's been quite a ride.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So you've been an advocate to basically squash state sales tax on bullion and rare coins.
Yes.
Right? That's been, that's kind of your deal, right? It seems that a lot of states are they're going that way, right? Kind of you're getting out of it. I think like Wisconsin, and I don't know, I think there's 13 states that still have sales tax?
Yeah, in some sort of capacity, because they all are convoluted in the way that they apply it. It's not straightforward at all. But I'm actually having a fiscal impact report done as we speak to tell me what are the implications. And what you find is in those states that have significant sales tax, people it's kind of like they shop with their feet, so to speak, and they'll go buy where they don't have to pay. Yeah. And it's sad because somebody wants to, sometimes y'all will sell coins or bullion at a tiny margin, and the government's going to take a margin that's 10 times greater than that. That's terrible, and to do anything to discourage people. I mean, we've been off the gold standard for a very long time. Having worked with Jimmy Blanchard, who advocated for owning gold, a lot of people, even very intellectual people, don't realize it was illegal to own gold for a long period of time. But you can kind of create your own gold standard. But if you got to buy gold and pay a 9% sales tax on top of it, it makes it a bad deal for everybody.
Yeah, it's no fun. Yeah, I can't imagine many people doing it. So, yeah, well, good for you. I mean, they've got the right guy in their corner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm, share all the information. I don't know if there's a single coin dealer in any legislature, and I'm the one that can, share with them the impacts of what it's doing. Not to the industry, but to people in general that don't have the ability to buy this without having to shell out, significant amounts of that money to Uncle Sam, which I think is unnecessary. And the truth is people just don't buy it. They go elsewhere to get it. I'm pleased to see that Texas has no, sales tax on coins, and I hope that states continue to follow in the footsteps of Texas and South Carolina and Florida and other states that have done away with it.
Can you give me what is the Louisiana? You told me but there was like 5 or 6 people talking behind you. So tell me, what is the actual tax in Louisiana on bullion and rare coins?
Well, it's dependent. We don't have counties like y'all do here.
Okay.
You don't say y'all either, do
Marsh.
you? Y'all have counties. We have parishes, but each parish has a different local tax. But all in, I would tell you it's somewhere between 9 and 10.5%. And then the way it's applied is complicated too, because there's all kinds of ambiguous ways where you don't have to pay sales tax, and there are ways that you do have to pay sales tax, and then it's been changed many a times. And most coin dealerships are not like a car dealership where it's 40 or 50 employees. There's a lot of coin dealerships that are 3 to 5 people. I mean, U.S. Coin's a big operation. Y'all could deal with the implications, but the typical mom and pop coin shop with 3 or 4 people, it's confusing to them. And I asked them, what's your understanding? Because I visit with a lot of people in Louisiana in this business, and they look at me, puzzled, and they ask me to explain it to them. I'm like, well, I'm, at the forefront of this, and it's complicated. It's not straightforward. But the bottom line is, across the nation, you shouldn't have sales tax on, something that's important for people to own. It's kind of like life insurance. It's important for people to own, especially if you're starting a young family. And imagine putting a tax on that, or trading your home and you got to put a 9 or 10%. I mean, coins and bullion are no different of an asset class than a lot of people have, and it should be treated as such with sales tax.
So where do you see Louisiana going? in terms of sales tax?
There was a time period about 5 years ago where they had to look at 350 different tax exemptions to determine which ones are absolutely necessary and which ones weren't. And so basically, like a landscaper, we don't tax landscapers. They don't have to charge a sales tax. The guy that cleans your pool or what have you. But those entities that were taxed, they had to come to the Capitol and make a case for why they thought it was, they should be exempt. They had to fight for their exemption. But my point with all that is we just got to a point where we're just going to rip it, the Band-Aid off, and everybody had to pay tax. And unfortunately, those repeals haven't happened as fast as I'd like. And I hope that next year, in 2023, we can do a full repeal of the sales tax on coins and bullion.
Well, that would be great.
Yeah, that would.
And it's good for people in Louisiana to know that you guys got somebody here fighting for you. And deep down, there's somebody in every state that's doing it, right?
Yes.
I know who's advocating here in Texas. I know my Uncle Dan advocated in state of Washington.
Okay.
And beat that and got that repealed.
Yeah.
It's so crucial to the business. I couldn't imagine having a 4 or 5% tax on bullion. I mean, it would decimate our business.
Yeah, no.
It would decimate the business.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
I mean, it just maybe I don't know. I never thought of it.
Couldn't do it. You couldn't do any business.
I mean,
with that,
no, you couldn't. It would be very tough. It would be very tough. So awesome. So we appreciate that. From a coin dealer, fellow coin dealers, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that are thanking you right now for basically standing up for coin shops, understanding, being an avid coin collector, at least, falling in love with the coins at the age of 6 and, carrying it into your professional career and then, doing at the state level, and going into the House of Representatives and fighting for coin dealers. I mean, that's awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that appreciate that.
I fight the red light cameras too. I hate those red light cameras,
Oh man.
Yeah.
We had those for
I've
a
never
while.
I've never paid a red light camera bill.
Well, this is terrible. I told somebody, trace your middle finger, put that on their invoice, because I call it an invoice. I don't call it a ticket, because they're all from out of state. I mean, and they're owned. Some of them are owned by entities outside the United States.
It's Alabama. Does Alabama have them?
I don't know.
I think I got one from Mobile, Alabama.
It's terrible for people. For
We haven't
tourism.
had them for 10 years.
Yeah, but I think
We had them for a brief.
You had them, but I don't think anybody ever paid them.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I think that it was like one of those not honor
Pretty sure I
system
got
type
one.
things, but there wasn't a, so like say for instance you get a speeding ticket, you don't pay your speeding ticket, you suspend your license.
Yeah.
But they weren't suspending your licenses for running red.
Right. They treat it different, and they don't affect your insurance or anything of that nature.
So I think people kind of gave it the big FU.
Yeah.
And and they were kind of like, after all, they were like, well, I guess this isn't going to work.
Well, I tried to get rid of it, and they're like, you, Hollis, really want this to go to a vote? I really thought I had like 7 or 8 members, so I didn't think I was going to embarrass myself. And it was 14-1. I look around the room, no. And I was like, you rascals, because the night before they were all with me. And I was like, not even the courtesy of coming to me.
Right.
But the chair wanted me to save a little face, like, you sure you want to bring this to a vote? And I just was so, optimistic. And he's like, you got beat up pretty good there. But truth be known, it was a badge of honor. And I was like, I can't believe 14 people voted against that,
Yeah.
And so.
But what was it for? So what was in it for them?
All I wanted was a constitutional amendment, which basically says the people of Louisiana have the opportunity to vote. Do they want these cameras or do they not want the cameras?
Yeah.
But what was in it for the ones that said yay?
I hate to say it. I think that they, reported to small town government officials and mayors that counted on that revenue. And all I say is it's a big money grab. Somebody did a public records request in New Orleans, and they had like 300 or 400 emails pertaining to the red light cameras. And in 300 or 400 emails, they were all related to either money. None of them were about safety. None at all were about safety. So they hide behind safety. And what a lot of people don't know is 50%, usually 45 to 55% goes to a company that is out of state. And one of the big ones is based out of Australia.
It was MTB or MT. I always see a MBT or NTB or something like that, where it's like, you owe the state of Texas, like, wait a minute, this is not an official stamp from the state of Texas. This is from some third-party company that's either collecting, either they bought the debt on, for pennies on the dollar or something.
And usually, you don't even, like here in Texas, if you got one, you wouldn't send it in Louisiana. It's to Arizona. And it's like, I'm not going to send that off. I've gotten 2. Once I was bringing my daughter to the emergency room. She was white as a ghost, dehydrated. And I was like, I'll be darned. They had a camera right outside the hospital. And I call them like salespeople. That must have been a top performer for them, because typically when you go in the hospital, you're
hauling butt.
You're hurrying. If it were an officer, they'd probably help me get to the hospital that much quicker, or taking into consideration the circumstances. And so that was annoying. And the one time I was on Poydras Street, and we have Mardi Gras parade. Y'all probably have them here too, but they were staging a parade, and an officer was like waving me through the red light, and I'm like, do I follow the officer's command, which I decided to do, or do I pay attention to the red light? And so I drove through it, and wouldn't you know, 2 weeks later I get a ticket in the mail, and then you got to go fight literally City Hall and plead your case, and I just ignored that. And so I just wrote on the little letter that they sent me, no, tear this up. And I continue to get those every 6 months. I think they just automatically send out a little invoice to me, which they'll never get paid, because I was told by the officer to do that. But there's so many people, they don't have the time, or they don't have the desire to fight that.
Yeah,
and I don't blame them, but then
they're
spending their hard-earned money for no good reason. It's sad.
So, I'm not sending anything to Arizona until they learn how to count votes.
Yeah, no, smart. Now you're on to something that across this country, people are, following those stories.
Let me just tell you.
As they should.
I'm not I try to stay just like away from political stuff. I'm just, number one, I'm not smart enough to really truly talk about it.
No, that's not true at all. So,
well, I can tell you one thing though. I do know how to count, and I just don't understand this vote counting thing.
Yeah,
even in
you
Harris
think it'd
County,
be easy and straightforward, and it's anything but. Yeah,
it's just it just seems like in the last 2 election cycles, it's gotten so weird, and it's gotten so gray and weird.
It is weird.
It's weird.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the media's so messed up. You don't know what to believe, and if you're on Twitter, then you're seeing one thing, and if you're watching CNN, you're hearing one thing. You see Fox, you see something different. It's kind of like, wait a minute, hold on. So like, what's really going on here? Yeah. But the fact of the matter is that there is some issues with counting votes. I mean, there's no denying that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And that's unfortunate.
Whether it's for one side or the other, I'm not saying who. It just, for some reason, it's pretty effed up.
You're right.
I can't figure out how to count votes. It's just kind of crazy to me.
You're right. And the fuel for democracy is people showing up and doing their civic duty and participating in elections. But when you start losing that, fidelity, I get it.
Scary.
It makes a lot of people say, I don't even know that I want to participate. And that's unfortunate.
And that's kind of, unfortunately, what happens.
Yeah.
And then less people participate because they think their vote doesn't count.
Yeah. No, you're definitely right.
Right. And then now what do you have?
Right.
It's just weird. All right, but to get off of that, you spent some time on television.
Yep.
Okay, selling some coins. You were telling me a pretty funny story. So give me a funny story.
I'm trying to think of a PG.
Yeah, I want
a PG.
You can go a little PG-13 plus on this show.
Okay, let me think.
PG-25.
Well, I mean, every now and then they would have somebody have a something leading up to our show, and there was a young girl selling jewelry, and she was trying to showcase the ring, and wouldn't you know, she puts it on her middle finger, and the camera people upstairs have her basically shooting the bird straight forward at the camera, and she's like, look at the solid 10-karat gold shank on that ring, and they're in her earpiece saying, honey, put that finger down, and then one time my partner, I didn't know it, they ran tape, and I had just bought a house in Tennessee, and I'd always lived in Louisiana, but I bought a house in Tennessee because I could tell they wanted me to show a little commitment. So I did. It was a big house. And anyway, that very first show, my partner, Robert's like melting down and saying all kinds of terrible words on TV, and I'm like looking upstairs at the booth going, what is going on? This is insane what's happening right here. And then when it finally came to an end, they said to me, Paul, don't worry, that was not broadcast. And I said, what? Well, what was going on? And they said, we ran the first half hour that y'all did from 11 to 11:30. And this was like 2 a.m. And so I was like, oh, but all the monitors was like everything that we were, doing in the middle of the night was being broadcast. And so I was like, oh, they were messing with me. And everybody on the crew was in on it. Y'all got a, nice crew here, but there was probably 15 people there. And then you had, 100 people answering the phone. And I was like, what? This is like surreal. I mean, this whole show's about to go under. So I've just, been doing coins for such a long time, and it was a very peculiar thing because coin shows usually are done in the middle of the night, and like 2 to 4 a.m. I remember the hotel I used to stay at, they were like, this guy's casual all the time, but at like 1:30 a.m. he walks out in a suit, usually with powder on my forehead, and then at 5 a.m. I come back exhausted. It's kind of like 2 hours on TV is like a 10-hour day because you got to have so much energy. But I did that for a number of years, and really enjoyed it. And then I transitioned from TV to politics, and then that brings me to where I'm at today.
Well, cool.
How was that for somewhat PG, borderline?
Yeah, that was good.
You could have dug a little deeper.
Yeah, maybe the next podcast. How's that?
All right, yeah. Well,
I'll be more comfortable sharing some of the deep down stories, but I got quite a few from my time on TV. You got to keep it entertaining, No
doubt.
Yeah.
So those couple hours there, you were like full force, like super like positive and upbeat. So like it takes a lot out of you.
Yeah.
And why do they shoot it so? Is it just the time slot, or is it like why in the world would it be from 2 to 4, 2 to 5 a.m.?
I think that's when, coins would perform really well. I mean, we'd have some coin shows during the day and they did okay, but in the middle of the night, for whatever reason, that's when we called them the coin. People would come out and, buy coins and, There was one time, this is safe to share, you have your little IFB that records everything.
Yeah.
I was in the bathroom. I forgot to turn it off. And there in my earpiece saying, Hollis, man, turn off your IFB. And I was like, oh my gosh. So they heard a 20 some odd second stream, and that was really embarrassing, So I've had my fair share of stories. There's no doubt about that. But the 6-year-old Paul never would have thought that I'd been treated to the experiences that I've seen. But anyway.
So the House of Representatives, that's cool. That's cool. Chair seat 104, 11 years. That's something that's coming to an end. Is that? Yeah.
We have 4-year terms in Louisiana for a House member, and you're term limited, unlike Congress, but in state legislatures, a lot of them do have term limits. And I think it's good. It brings in, enthusiasm, different perspectives. And some people after time, they get a little bit lazy and their passion, ebbs and flows. And so, and I like new blood. I got there because of term limits. The preceding person was, termed out. And so in another year, I'll be out of office and I could run for another seat, and I consider it. But believe it or not, my passion is truly for coins, and I can tell.
I was going to ask you that. So tell me what, so you've, I guess you'll spend 12 years, once it's finished in 104. What do people in your situation do next as far as climbing the political ladder? What's the next step? Whose throat do you go after next?
That's a good way to put it. You're absolutely right. You can go from one chamber to the other, the House to the Senate. Sometimes you even have people come from the Senate to the House, which is kind of a demotion, but you could run for y'all probably call it a county commissioner. In Louisiana, we call it a parish president. You could do that. You could run for a public service commission, which is not something unique to Louisiana, but I don't think all states have it. You could run for a parish-wide office, if you're a physician coroner. Actually, in Louisiana, you don't have to be a coroner to be a physician to be a coroner. You could run for clerk. But if I were to run for another office, I'd probably run for a statewide office. Lieutenant governor, basically promote the state of Louisiana, would be a heck of a lot of fun. But the problem is I really like our current lieutenant governor. To be governor of the state of Louisiana or any state nowadays, you got to raise $20 million. That's not easy to do. And I can tell you it's not a whole lot of fun to do. I mean, even in a state legislative seat nowadays, you got to spend $400,000 or $500,000 because it's hard to get your message out to the people. You do a few mailers, you do a couple of TV spots. It's big bucks,
AM radio and
Yeah, or local TV or whatever the case may be. But, you know, I could run for something in the future, but I can just tell you that my focus has been, you know, transitioning from political office to coins. Because when I think of 3 or 4 cool stories and politics and I compare them to the 20 or 30 stories I have about coins, I have more enthusiasm and passion when I talk about collectibles and coins. And I've done coins a lot longer than I have done 11 years in politics, but I mean, it gets stale. We can debate 5 hours, one crazy bill. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were debating whether or not kids could bring a suntan lotion into school, and because they have some sort of FDA sticker on them, it was in need of debate, but was it in need of 5 hours of debate? And there are times where we'll debate something, and I'm not kidding, 7, 8 hours, and then it'll pass with no opposition whatsoever. And I'm like, I really want that 7 or 8 hours back, you know? So anyway, but I encourage people to get involved in public service. And my dad inspired me. He didn't like coins. He could care less about coins, but he was big into public service. And I think he'd be happy to this day that I followed in his footsteps and served in the legislature for my 12 years. And but my real passion, you know, ever since, you know, my grandmother handed me that peace dollar has been coins, as strange as that is. So,
well, grandmas, buy peace dollars and give them to your grandkids. You never know what'll happen. You could inspire the next president of the United States. Well, Paul, I appreciate you taking the time
pleasure.
To come and,
Good being with you
hang
guys.
out with us.
Yeah.
And thank you for all the hard work you do for our community and just for the coin community in general.
Yeah.
You know, keeping collectors and, you know, keeping retail buyers in mind in the forefront.
Yeah.
You know, buying a tangible asset, you know, there should be no tax. I mean, that's just not even.
Couldn't agree more.
I mean, it just doesn't make much sense. So, you know, we appreciate you fighting the good fight. And thanks for coming on the Coin Shop podcast.
My pleasure.
We appreciate your time. All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right, guys, that's another edition. That's a 2 for Tuesday, the first 2 for Tuesday ever on the Coin Shop podcast. Thank you very much for tuning in.